Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's story. What would you do if someone you cared about suddenly disappeared, and the only clue you had was a fleeting glimpse in the crowd? Would you search tirelessly or let it go? Join us as we follow Alex and Joni on a quest to find the mysterious Tuna, a woman hiding secrets, struggling with motherhood, and fighting for survival. But there's more to this search than meets the eye. Could the answers be closer than they think? And what will they discover about Tuna that no one expected? Stay with us until the end to find out. Don't forget to subscribe and help us reach 1,000 followers. Your support makes all the difference. Tuna gently bends down, cradling her baby in her arms, a tender smile touching her lips as she feels the soft, warm breath of her child. The room around her is small and humble, bathed in the soft light of the early morning that seeps through the window, casting a quiet glow over the old, worn furniture. Her mother, sitting nearby, prepares to take the baby into her arms so that Tuna can go out in search of work. The weight of the world seems to rest on her shoulders as she moves slowly, her every step heavy with the burden of uncertainty about what tomorrow will bring. She whispers to her baby, a vow made in the stillness, "I'll work hard so you can have a better life." Despite her words, a storm brews within her. She is torn, unsure of what the future holds. Will she be able to find a stable job that pays enough to care for her child? Will she be forced to leave her baby for long hours, struggling to balance work and motherhood? The silence in the room is filled with unspoken fears, the hope for a brighter future, and the overwhelming pressure to provide. Tuna, despite her longing for peace, knows that life doesn't wait. She gives her baby one last kiss on the forehead before heading out the door, a mother's heart torn between her dreams and her responsibilities. In this quiet, fragile moment, she makes her decision, moving forward with determination, though her heart still aches with doubt. Alex stood at the edge of the crowded market, his eyes scanning the familiar streets, though his mind was far from the routine he had known. Beside him, Joni spoke in quiet, measured tones, as they both tried to gather any scrap of information about Tuna. "I asked around at the shops, but no one has seen her today," Alex murmured, frustration rising in his chest. The city felt large, its sprawling streets offering endless possibilities for someone to disappear. His phone buzzed in his hand, a text from a contact within the police, but it offered no new leads. "We're getting closer," Alex reassured Joni, though the words felt hollow in his throat. Tuna's disappearance weighed heavily on his heart, each minute of uncertainty gnawing at him. Their search was more than just a task now. It had become something personal. As the afternoon sunlight dimmed, Alex and Joni wandered down narrow alleys and over busy streets, questioning anyone who might have seen a tall woman carrying a baby. The more they asked, the more they realized how little they knew about the woman they were desperately trying to find. Despite the growing urgency, there was a quiet determination in Alex's step. He would not stop until he found her. He knew that the answer could be just around the corner, hidden in plain sight. The silence between him and Joni was filled with shared resolve, both of them hoping that their persistence would soon lead them to her. The air was heavy with humidity as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows on the pavement. Alex turned the corner and saw a familiar face in the bustling market. There, in front of a small stall, stood Tuna, her hands busy arranging fruits on the table, a look of quiet concentration on her face. Her eyes flickered up, and for a brief moment their gazes locked. Alex's heart skipped. His first instinct was to run toward her, but he hesitated, unsure whether this was the right moment. The wind whispered through the trees, the world around them seeming to hold its breath. Tuna, sensing the eyes on her, looked around, and then her gaze softened when it landed on Alex. A moment of silence passed between them, both seemingly caught in the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the present. Tuna straightened up, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. She forced a small smile, but the exhaustion in her eyes was unmistakable. Alex took a step forward, his voice gentle. "Tuna, we've been looking for you." His words hung in the air, fragile yet full of unspoken feelings. Tuna didn't answer immediately. She simply nodded, her hand absently resting on the small basket of fruit, her thoughts elsewhere. Her life had always been a struggle, but now it seemed like it was unraveling, piece by piece. She wasn't sure whether to let Alex in, to open up the walls she had carefully built around herself, or to stay distant and self-reliant. The market noises faded into the background as they stood there, both caught between the past and the future. Alex could see the vulnerability in her eyes, and for the first time, he realized that finding Tuna was not just about solving a mystery. It was about understanding her, truly seeing the person she had become. A soft breeze rustled through the market, carrying with it the faint smell of fresh fruit and the hum of distant conversations. For a moment, everything around them seemed distant, like the world had paused for just a heartbeat. Tuna broke the silence, her voice low but steady. "I'm just trying to survive," she said quietly, her gaze drifting to the small basket of fruit in front of her. "I can't keep waiting for someone to save me." Alex's heart ached at her words, but he didn't know what to say. He wanted to tell her that she didn't have to do this alone, that he was here, but the words felt inadequate, like a clumsy attempt to mend something too fragile. Instead, he stood there, unsure of his place in her life. Tuna's eyes flickered up to meet his again, her expression guarded. "I've been trying for so long, Alex," she continued, her voice wavering just slightly. "Trying to make a life for my child, trying to make ends meet, but it feels like no matter what I do, it's never enough." The vulnerability in her voice hit him harder than he expected. He took a slow step forward, his gaze softening. "I know it's hard," he said quietly, "but you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to carry everything by yourself." There was a long pause, and for a fleeting moment it seemed like Tuna might say something more. But instead she simply nodded and turned away, her hands busily sorting the fruit once again. Alex watched her for a long moment, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. He knew this wasn't the time to push, but the quiet, the hesitation, the longing in both of their eyes said everything. As the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden hue over the market, the world felt smaller, closer. Alex stayed for a while longer, silently offering his presence, his support, knowing that, for now, that was all he could give. The evening air had grown cooler, and the market was slowly emptying out as the last vendors packed up their stalls. Alex lingered by the fruit stand, his mind still wrapped around the conversation he had just shared with Tuna. He couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, though neither of them had said much. The silence between them now felt different. There was an understanding in it, something deeper than words. Tuna, lost in her own thoughts, began to gather her things, preparing to leave. Alex watched her, the small movements of her hands a silent testament to the exhaustion that weighed on her. As she finished packing up, Tuna turned to him, her eyes meeting his once more. "I'll be fine," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "I have to go home now." The way she said it made Alex want to protest, to offer more help, but he knew that this was something she had to do on her own. There was strength in her independence, even if it meant carrying everything by herself. "I'll walk you home," Alex said, surprising himself. The words felt like a natural extension of his feelings, a way to be there for her without overwhelming her. Tuna hesitated for a moment, as if considering whether to accept his offer, then gave a small nod. "It's not far," she replied softly, but the quiet gratitude in her voice was unmistakable. They walked side by side in silence, the faint sound of their footsteps echoing in the cooling air. As they neared her home, the tension between them seemed to ease, the distance closing without the need for more words. When they reached the gate, Tuna stopped and turned to face him. Her eyes were softer now, the guarded walls she had kept up for so long slowly beginning to crumble. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "For being here." Alex simply nodded, his heart full of things he couldn't quite express. "I'm always here," he replied. And in that moment, both of them knew that this was only the beginning of something that couldn't be put into words yet. A quiet, growing connection forged in the spaces between the moments. As the night crept in, Tuna stood by the door, watching Alex walk away, his silhouette gradually fading into the darkening street. She felt an unfamiliar ache in her chest, a mix of gratitude and something deeper, something she wasn't ready to face. She turned back into her small home, the warmth of her grandmother's voice greeting her. The baby was sound asleep in the corner, his little chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. Tuna smiled at the sight, but her heart was heavy, weighed down by the realization that she was still alone. The quiet in the house was both comforting and suffocating. Tuna sank into the chair beside the crib, her fingers gently brushing her baby's cheek. "How can I give you the life you deserve?" she whispered to him. The answer was elusive, caught in the tension of every choice she made. The job she had sought earlier felt so distant now, like a dream she couldn't quite reach. Each decision she made seemed to pull her further away from the life she had imagined for herself and her child. Outside, the rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavy, the sound like a slow drumbeat against the windows. Tuna watched the raindrops slide down the glass, each one tracing its own path. It was the same way she felt, pulled in different directions, unable to control the flow of her life. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sound of the rain calm her racing thoughts. But even as the quiet settled around her, a part of her mind was still with Alex, still caught in the warmth of his words, his presence. She didn't want to admit it, but the space between them had begun to shrink, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to let him in. The night stretched on, and Tuna knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions. But for now, she let herself rest in the quiet, in the fleeting moments of peace before everything began again. The morning came too soon, with the faint light of dawn creeping into Tuna's small home. The rain had stopped, but the air felt heavy, as though something was about to change. Tuna stood at the window for a long time, staring out at the world beyond her. She had been up since before sunrise, but it was the feeling inside her that kept her awake. It was as though the search for her had begun to mirror her own inner search, looking for answers, for a sense of belonging, for hope. Alex's presence from the previous evening lingered in her thoughts. There had been something different in his eyes, something unspoken that she couldn't ignore. Despite everything, she couldn't shake the feeling that the search for her wasn't just about finding her. It was about understanding her, truly seeing the person she had become after all these years. She hadn't wanted to believe it, but in the quiet spaces between their words, she had felt a connection. As the morning stretched on, she knew it was time to go out again, to resume the search for work, but also to face the reality of her situation. Her baby needed more than what she could give, and the promise of a better life was always just out of reach. But it wasn't just her struggle anymore. The search for Tuna had become something larger, something that Alex, Joni, and even the police were caught in, and it seemed to be leading her to a moment she wasn't quite ready for. Meanwhile, Alex had just received the latest updates. After a restless night of waiting, he was now on his way to meet Joni. He had contacted a few officers for assistance, and now, with the morning unfolding, the urgency had intensified. He couldn't help but feel the weight of the responsibility growing on his shoulders. This wasn't just a case anymore. It had become personal. As he drove, the city streets blurred outside the window, his thoughts only on one thing: finding Tuna. But what would happen when they did? Could she ever accept the help he wanted to give her? Or would the walls she had built around herself remain too high? As Alex arrived at the meeting point, he couldn't shake the feeling that the answers would come, but they might not be the ones he was expecting.
Chào mọi người đến câu chuyện ngày hôm nay. Câu chuyện xoay quanh Alex và John, hai người đàn ông nên tìm kiếm Tuna, một người phụ nữ bí ẩn và đầy nỗi lo lắng. Trong lúc Alex và John hợp tác với cảnh sát để tìm manh mối về cô, Tuna lại đang đối mặt với khó khăn trong cuộc sống, phải nuôi con nhỏ trong những khi không đủ tiền bạc và một công việc ổn định, không ổn định. Liệu Alex có giúp đỡ Tuna hay cô sẽ tiếp tục tự mình chiến đấu? Cuộc tìm kiếm này sẽ tiết lộ những bí mật thì kết quả cuối cùng là gì? Đừng quên đăng ký để giúp chúng tôi đạt được 1.000 theo dõi.